As far as your Borg Cube, it's milestone 12 that you would have the blueprints to unlock it. Looking at your bottom half, you've got 4 different milestones here, and then in the top half, the same thing. Each of these hidden within here are the other handful of blueprints that you need. If you don't buy the battle pass, you're only going to get 25 in the top half. You'll have to earn the other 75 in the event store next month. It's going to take up probably a large portion of your event store loot to get it next month with those other 75 blueprints. Maybe not a large, at least a decent amount, right? Even if it's as high as half, that's still, half your event store you could be spending on other things like officers and things like that. So if you're on the fence or even slightly like, maybe, just buy the $20 battle pass, get the stupid cube, and then you can save all that event store currency for officers and things. Because it's not like you're paying 20 bucks for the cube. You're paying 20 bucks for the cube plus all the resources and stuff that are in the bottom half of the battle pass anyway. You've got stuff to upgrade the ship. You've got stuff for artifacts, the artifact gallery building. You've got extra Picard shards in there. There's another 12 shards for him in there. Plus, a few more down here, some data shards. You've got some proto matter. So there's a lot of good stuff in the bottom half of the battle pass. That would certainly make it worth having as well for the $20 investment. Is the ship good for armadas? Probably. If we'll look at the Borg Cube a little bit more detail. Actually, screw it. Let's just do it now. Why not? So let's start with our Borg Cube. There is the stupid thing. We joked about it months ago, right? They're going to release G6 content, and what are we going to have to do? Well, because of power creep, right? They're going to have to give us like a Borg Cube. It's the only thing that would make sense. Well, apparently we hit that one a little too close to home because we're actually getting a Borg Cube. Borg cutting beam deals 23,000 base hull hit points to non-armada targets, is reduced against players. When targeting a ship above your player level, you're also decreasing the damage dealt by 10% per level. Now we've got a chart somewhere. I had this chart handy. I was looking at it earlier. That has all the damage that this cube can do. Let's go find it. Hang on. G6 screenshots. Bam. So here's our cube when this is done loading. Okay. So obviously getting the cube and tiering it up, is it good for armadas? Well, first off, it's going to scale like any of your other ships. So, and it's scaling comparable to those other ships because the ability to upgrade it is limited by how far you've pushed your faction ships. So could the ship be good itself? Yeah, it looks like it actually could put out a pretty decent amount of damage. Obviously, there's upgrading costs right here, but here's your cutting beam. So your base cutting beam, once you level it up, you're going to get this nice little PvE damage bonus. But the kicker is when you use it for PvP, that damage is cut in half. And we thought they had talked about it. DJ was convinced they had agreed to remove it, but apparently they didn't. As we found out this morning, when targeting a ship above your player level, the hull hit point damage dealt is decreased by 10% per level the person is higher than you. So if you're a 39 and you want to shoot a level 60 player, because that's what your PvP range is, right? You can shoot all the way up to a level 60. Whatever damage you were going to do, let's say you could even get at 39, what could you get to? You could get this thing up to tier 5. So you'd be doing right here 164,000 damage, which actually looks like it's the same at the lower tiers. It's not cut in half. Interesting. But then you're going to cut it in half by 210%, or reduce it by 210%. So that ain't going to do anything. So punching up with the cutting beam is really not much of an option at all for PvP functions. Going against bigger other hostiles, again, you're doing the same 164,000 hull health damage. If it's just a regular hostile, maybe that helps a little bit. If you're trying to do a gold mission boss or a Q's trial hostile, they're going to reset their hull health right after you target them. So probably not good for doing that. As far as actual damage against armadas, well, to do that, we'd have to kind of compare it to another ship of similar class. So let's see what we can find here. So we said we're going to go, what, tier 5, and we're going to compare it to an auger. So you have to get the auger up. Let's take the auger up to like tier 6 here. No. We'll just do it the hard way. There we go. All right. So based on that little graphic, this would have to be tier 6, and then we could get the cube to tier 5. So let's see what we got. Relatively speaking, it has less attack, less DPR, and it's not getting the same values and things like that that the auger would. Interesting. Faction ship still stronger than it slightly. As far as upgrade costs, well, you're spending a whole lot more in materials to upgrade this thing. Less parts, less actual commented on, far less here to get it upgraded to that far. A lot more titanium though, which for players in that level bracket is going to be hard to get 2.6 billion titanium. But the overall damage isn't as good at that particular area. Now, I will say the one thing the cube does have going for it is the firing pattern, because holy moly. If you had some good officers on here and you're getting, now again, this is base value. You know, this thing gets a tremendous boost from its officer slots. If you have high stats, because you can stack a lot of stats below deck and things like that, this thing can be seriously powerful. And when you start looking at this firing pattern, it's shooting 6 times every single round. This high energy disruptor beam fires every round. This kinetic torpedo fires every single round. And then every other round, you get a second energy and kinetic weapon. So 12-6, 12-6. That's a heck of a firing pattern. You know, if you've got Hugh or somebody like that and you're fighting hostiles, boosting all these shots and making them criticals, you just hit 12 criticals with hull breach and all that other stuff, you're going to do a lot of extra damage. Compared to, what's our auger got? 4-5, 4-4-5. I mean, by the end of round 2, you haven't even fired as much as this thing is fired in round 1. That's only 9 shots, 10, 11, 12, 13 by the end of round 3. 13 to 12 in the first round. Yeah, I think we'll take the cube for the firing pattern. Now, the cube doesn't get any base research. It's not a faction ship, it's a specialty ship. There is additional research for it in the Borg tree, which we can go look at real quick. But a lot of it, you know, again, it's Borg tree. So this stuff doesn't unlock till 38 for players. And a lot of this other bonus stuff requires, you know, the cube gets extra warp range and stuff. All based on having your cube built. So you can't even do this research until you have your cube built. And then you're talking about boosting your cube. Here's the base damage increase, getting that damage up a little bit. Same thing out here with the cutting beam efficiency, more energy damage for all your ships. So there's a number of little things in here, but that's again going to be a little further down the road for the entry level cube. For the average player who's in that 39 to 45 ops range, you're going to be able to do some of this stuff once you build the ship, and it is going to get a bit of a boost there for sure. So it certainly has potential. It's just going to take a little while, obviously, because it's a specialty ship and it's starting over at level 1, and it's designed to go from ops 28 to ops 70. So it's going to take a while to get through those first handful of levels. Would the cutting beam work on Q's trials? Only if you one-shot it. If you kill the Q's, if you're doing enough damage that you can kill the hostile in one shot, then yes, it would save you the time and trouble of doing your Q's trials. If you don't kill it completely with the cutting beam, the hostile will heal immediately the damage that it still has left, because that's how the Q's trials work. You can't double tap the Q trials the way you can do gold mission bosses if you're at least quick on the draw. So probably not ideal. At the higher levels, it may get you to a point where it'll save you some time if you're, in your mid 40s or low 50s and you're still doing the 2-star trials. Maybe your cube, when it's tier 9 or tier 10, can one-shot your Q trial hostile and just save you the trouble of having to do it. But the other thing is upgrading this thing. So when you build the cube, like how far could you even take it right away? The 2 regular events, this doesn't give anything related to the cube, and neither does this. You get a handful of 7 and 9 shards. Nothing there that helps this. So all you get is, if you spend the money to buy it and get it right now, you finish this, which gives you 3 million of these alloys, as well as 10,000 of these cybernetic things, which is what you use for the research. Well, what does 1 million, or what does 3 million even get you? 3 million isn't even enough to get it to tier 3. So right out of the box, you're trying to go from, how high can I get this thing? Well, you need 4.4 million to get it to tier 3. Now, we got a few more in some of these other events today. The trivia, if you happen to finish your trivia, which I haven't done yet, but in some of these milestones, actually the individual trivia questions, you get an extra 75,000, so there's an extra 350. So that's getting you closer to that, but yeah, you're still coming up a little short, so. Notes did say cutting beam does not work on armadas. That's correct. The cutting beam does not work on armadas. It does not work on Alliance star bases either, or player bases. It is PvE hostiles or PvP other players' ships, and that's it. Well, you can also do the gold mission bosses, like I said, or the Q trials. So, yeah, the officer stats do give it a big boost. I think it can go up to like 900% of its values, but you also need a high amount of officer stats to get it there. It's almost 1 million in officer stats, but obviously we have more research that's also going to boost officer stats. So there's a lot of stuff going on. Number of shots does not matter if it only does half damage. True, it would even out to be about the same, but as the ship grows, the firing pattern is going to grow with it, and if you do take advantage of officers like you that make your shots criticals, obviously having more shots is going to produce more damage, more isolytic damage if you're getting any of that stuff going. It is a battleship, right? So your artifacts over here that trigger off of battleships, like they have burning, that give you additional isolytic damage, they're going to come into play as well. Increasing isolytic damage while on a battleship and the opponent is burning, getting this extra chunk of damage. That's every single shot. Now you're putting more isolytic damage on the target. So things like that will start to kind of snowball based on that crazy firing pattern. So something else to keep in mind there. And then, of course, there's the novelty of it because, it's a cube, right? And we've all wanted a Borg Cube. But it's going to take a lot of time or money in order to get it to, you know, for it to catch up to the rest of where you're at right now. If you're a player and you're using, G5 on commons and rare ships already to do your stuff, like this cube could take weeks or months to get to the point where you're actually going to slot it in place of one of your existing ships. So it's there's definitely a path there, and it might take a little while to get there. We're going to go back down and kill the 55s. That one took a little too much damage. What's going on, Ace? So, the cube's fun. We'll see once it gets where it's going to go. Once, obviously, if there's more research and stuff that comes next arc or down the road, or, how we continue to source these materials on a daily basis, and, what the timeline is for moving this ship up. Um, you know, they put in the patch notes that, at tier 18, level 70, it would be the strongest ship in the game. I don't think that's really a concern for 99.9% of the people playing this game, but hey, it's nice to know that that's what you intend it, is for it to be better than anything else once it's done. But I have a feeling for a lot of people, it's going to be something that you just kind of do in the background a little bit, and you get there when you get there with it. So